Niratam karunamayam namami chinmayam devam sadgurum brahma vidvaram vasudeva sutam devam kamsachanura mardanam devaki paramanandam krishnam vande jagadgurum tvameva mata cha pita tvameva tvameva bandhusya sakha tvameva tvameva vidya dravidam tvameva tvameva sarvam mama deva deva tvameva sarvam gurudeva deva. Hari Om. We are doing a series on self-realization because ultimately that is the very purpose of life itself. And in the last class we were talking about how Brahman, which is infinite, of the nature of existence, because Brahman has to exist, and it's the nature of consciousness, since we are not talking about unconscious entity, and it has to be limitless or infinite. That is nature. The word of means Brahman means infinite also, and therefore it is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That's what the scripture says, and which is same as Satchid Anandam Brahma. So if it is infinite, is a consciousness is infinite as per the scriptures, then how come we see the whole world which is inert? So we're talking about the earth and the planets and even the light, space, time, galaxies, everything is inert only. They are not conscious entities. And they're called gross. Gross means it is essentially material. Even space is called material according to Vedanta. And therefore everything material is inert. How come the infinite consciousness has become inert material? Because according to the objective sciences, consciousness is a product of material, whereas now, according to Vedanta, material is a product of consciousness. So there is a difference. Who is right? It's a very good question. Oh, scientists are right. That's what scientists claims. Vedanta says scientist is right only in the field of objective sciences. But essence of that he cannot really determine because he has no tools. Why? Because the one who says the word, the material is real, he is a conscious entity. Unconscious entity cannot say. So a scientist himself has to be a conscious entity, and he is trying to investigate everything else other than himself, excluding the subject, is investigating the object, and in the process he is limiting his investigative things, because he is not including totality. So when you including partiality or partial things and making a theory out of partial data, then obviously that theory is incomplete, and therefore it is not completely true. It is only valid in that partial area, and that area Vedanta calls it as transactional world or vyavaharika satyam. So he is not able to include the subject also into the totality in the universe, because the universe consists of both subject and object, and his objective tools that he is using, is a telescope, microscope, or whatever scope that he wants to use, including quantum mechanics, are not amenable to investigate the subject I am. That's what we said. Therefore, objective sciences can never analyze the totality of the system that includes consciousness. So, according to them, the Big Bang theory occurred. How did the world created? Well, theory is a Big Bang. And where did the Big Bang occur? It's a very interesting question, those who are scientists. So where did the Big Bang occur? Because where is the concept of space? Big Bang cannot occur in space because space itself has to be created. So in fact the space also comes with the bang only. So where is what? Where the questionnaire is, that's where the Big Bang is. So whoever questions, a conscious entity is asking where is the Big Bang, and whoever is asking or wherever is sitting and asking, that's where the bang occurred. If I am here and inquiring in this earth, that's where the bang occurred. If I am away, if galaxies and galaxies away, and then try to inquire where the Big Bang occurred, that's where. So one person said, Big Bang occurred everywhere, and everywhere is not again a concept of space because he cannot use, because the space comes with the bang. So how did the bang occur? How did the space created? When the bang occurred, the things are flying where? In space. It's creating the space as though as they are flying. You cannot ask the question, where was the material that banged? How did it come into picture? You cannot ask those questions because it is what they call it a singularity. Singularity means we don't know. So ignorance is put into the word as a singularity, and all it means is we don't know what is before. I can only talk about a microsecond later or picosecond later after. So time itself also comes from that. So you cannot ask what was before. Before Big Bang, what was there? How did the material come? All those questions are invalid because it is what they call singularity. Same thing, a Vedantin says it is anirvachaniyam. It means inexpressible because the words cannot reach what Brahman is or what Brahman is before creation. So all that is to be understood. So you cannot criticize saying that Vedanta is wrong, it's a belief system, whereas science, objective science is a fact because it's objectively everybody can investigate. But we'll ask a question, who is that everybody? If you're not analyzing that properly, then the whole thing, in fact in the quantum mechanics, you come to a stage where the investigator investigating the system affects the system itself. So that's called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, where when I'm trying to investigate, my very investigation affects the system, therefore the result will be not really pertinent. So if I'm investigating, I will get one. If you are investigating, you will get one, because there is an uncertainty of the space and time, location and time. All that is essentially the uncertainty, what Acharya calls it as anirvachaniyam, indeterminate, because you cannot really determine. And I gave an example of pitch dark room. Is a chair there or chair not there? Only I can say probability of the existence or the non-existence of a chair is 50%. It will remain as 50% even if you turn light on, as long as I don't see. So I have to be, a subject has to be there to make that 50% probability to the probabilistic to deterministic system, where yes, there is chair 100%, no 100% there is no chair. Either way, it becomes a deterministic only when consciousness enters into the equation. That means I have to be there to say, without me present, the chair existence will still remain indeterminate. It may be, it may not be. That's called anirvachaniyam. World, because the world cannot say, or chair doesn't say I am there. That's the problem. Because chair is not conscious entity. So, looking back at the Brahman, pure consciousness, if it is infinite, the question we answered last time is, how do I see, where do I see all inert things here? For that, we took an example of a light where the white light has a Vibgayar, the 7 colors are there, Vibjayar or Vibgayar. But I see, even though same white light is falling on different objects, I see some objects are red, some objects are blue, some objects are yellow, And why they look yellow? You say, oh, they are red color. But what does that mean? Because I am seeing the color. That is what a light color is. The red color, white color, the 7 colors. So if an object looks red only because that object is the structure, the molecular structure of that object is such that it can absorb all other colors except red color. Therefore it looks red. Similarly, all other colors are absorbed except yellow, so that object looks yellow. If all colors are absorbed, it looks dark. If no color is absorbed, that means in that 7 colors, no absorbed, then it looks white. If 2 colors are absorbed or not absorbed, then you have a mixture of those 2 colors that I see. So there is varieties and varieties of shades in colors, and some are sensitive enough to find out. Particularly, I can't find out if I go to the sari shop or something, I have only red color or this color, but they have shades of red, shades of pink, and so on and so forth, because there is a mixture of other colors also in that. That means that material is able to have 2 colors on a different degrees absorption. Now you know what it means. So same way, pure Brahman, which is of the nature of Sat Chit Ananda, when it as though, quote unquote, falls on an inert object, the structure of the inert object is such that it can absorb the consciousness, and the Ananda only reflect existence. So all inert materials exist, but they are not conscious, not because of the problem of Brahman, because of the nature of the reflecting media. It's very important, because when we apply to jiva differences, where does it come from? Because this is where the philosophical differences occur, and people keep on arguing, but I am using simple rational intelligence that we are familiar with, and we see why a reflecting medium has a capacity to reflect in a particular way, even though original light is the same. So all pervading Satchidananda only get reflected the existence part in the inert things. And for consciousness to reflect, not only the material should be not only existing, but also it should be subtle enough. And subtle enough means that it is a subtle body like a mind and the intellect, and we have 4 parts according to Vedanta: Mano, Chitta, Ahankara, and Manaha means mind and intellect, and Ahankara and Chitta. 4 aspects of the same subtle body is differentiated, and all that can reflect, the subtle body can reflect not only existence, because subtle body exists, therefore it is reflecting not only existence but consciousness as well, but no Ananda. For Ananda also to get reflected, that subtle body has to be calm and serene and peaceful, and then only even Ananda also gets reflected depending on the degree of the serenity or peacefulness. Now you see why the different people look different, different jivas are different, only because, number 1, the reflecting media are different. What's reflecting? The body is reflecting only Sat aspect of it, the gross material. But the mind is reflecting not only Sat, but also Chaitanyam. And depending upon the purity of that subtle body, you get a reflection of the consciousness also. So some are bright, some are dull and more lethargic, like what we call a couch potato. That's a possibility. Inert, like acting like a inert. Why? Because The mind is like inert. Its mind is not polished. So we are brainwashing. Brain needs to be washed, because so that it can reflect the consciousness. So all education is nothing but a brainwashing. Means purifying the brain. So therefore, the degree of the reflection depends upon the media and not necessarily the original, because Brahman original is the same across, because it is infinite, undifferentiated, no distinctions of any kind, no word can reach there, mind cannot reach, all that we went through. So now we understand that each jiva, who is a jiva? That's what we are asking now. Each jiva is nothing but a subtle body that reflects the consciousness. That's number one. But while reflecting the consciousness, it acts as though it is a conscious entity. Let me repeat again. While reflecting the consciousness, the subtle body, as though, quote unquote, acts like a conscious entity. It doesn't have consciousness. It is only body, which is matter, subtle matter. Yet, because it has a capacity to reflect the consciousness Brahman, and therefore, while reflecting, it becomes as though conscious entity, depending on how much it reflects. How much means how pure it is, depends on that. Consciousness is also gets reflected. Clear now? Now, who is a jiva? There is a jiva bhinnatvam. Differences between one individual and other individual arises not because of Brahman, because there is no differences of any kind. It's only because of the reflective capacity of the subtle body. Right? Some are bright, some are dull, some are rajasic, some are sattvic, some are tamasic. All is the properties are belonging to the Prakriti. We learn in the Gita. This mind, intellect are by nature Prakriti. Prakrutim Purusham Chaiva Vijunadi Ubhavapi. So this is the beginningless creation that we are talking about. And this Prakriti and Purusha are together. Who is the Purusha and Prakriti? Now we should know. The Prakriti is the subtle body, and the Purusha is now who? Pure consciousness that is getting reflected in the subtle body. Right now I identify self, I am this and he is that. Who is identifying? So all that self-realization has to be clear now, slowly. So first, who is a jiva? And it is a jiva that needs to be liberated. Right? And if the jiva, I am a jiva, and therefore I am looking for Brahman, so I need a liberation or freedom from limitations. Liberation is freedom from limitations. We discussed that as Desha Kala Vastu Aparichinnam. That means limitless, not limited by space-wise, time-wise or object-wise. And who am I? That's what we are investigating, right? Right now, I am a jiva. Right now, I am a jiva. Who says that? A conscious entity, obvious unconscious entity. And who is that conscious entity? Not Brahman. Because Brahman is all-pervading consciousness. It cannot say, I am a jiva even. Because there is no equipment even to say. There is no difference of any kind. Ekameva dvitiyam, one without a second. So Brahman point, there is no jiva, there is no Ishvara, there is no Jagat, and therefore no liberation required. It's free from all, eternally present. The who is required a liberation and who is looking for liberation, who is looking for self-realization, it's a jiva. Who is a jiva has to be clear now. Jiva is that where pure consciousness gets reflected by the subtle body, and by reflection the subtle body acts as though a conscious entity and claims that I am a jiva. Repeat again. Pure consciousness, the Brahman, is infinite. When it falls as though, quote unquote, on a subtle body, and when the subtle body has the capacity to reflect the consciousness also, not only existence, consciousness also, and in the process of reflection, the subtle body becomes as though a conscious entity, and then claim, because now it's a conscious entity, claim I am a jiva, I am a limited, I am this mind, I am this body, I am so and so. All that claim is by who? Not from Brahman. Brahman, we don't have anything of that sort. It's only at the jiva level. Who is a jiva? Jiva is only nothing but a reflected consciousness in the subtle body. By process of reflection, the subtle body become active as a conscious entity, and then claim that I am only a jiva. Who is claiming? It is the reflected consciousness. Reflected consciousness cannot exist without a reflecting medium. Follow? Now look at one by one. For reflection to occur, Brahman has to be there. For reflection to occur, reflective medium has to be there. When reflection occurs, it's not only the existence get reflected, but consciousness also gets reflected if it is a subtle body, and the subtle body now acts as though a conscious entity and then claims I am a jiva. And I am looking for limit because it identifies with the reflecting medium, and therefore it says I am this. Starting with the mind, intellect, and then extending it to the body, because the subtle body has to be located in the gross body for all transactional purposes. This has to be very clear, otherwise we will be having a lot of confusion of who realizes, what realizes, all that, and is God realization different from self-realization? If you understand these simple facts, then it's very crystal clear. Let me give a simple example. There is a sunlight all over. When I look at, hey, today the sun is very bright. I'm not looking at the sun. I can't even see the sun, it's too bright. And therefore I'm looking out and say it's sun, because how do I know sun? Hey, there's sunlight, beautiful sunlight is there. How do you know? I can see, right? That's all we say. What do you really see? Remember, I am not seeing the sunlight directly. I am seeing an object outside a wall or a door or something bright. Sunlight falling on it, getting reflected, and the reflected light comes to my retina and forms an image and say there is sun out there. There is a sunlight, because what I am seeing is not the sun. I am seeing only a reflected light by a media. From that I conclude that I am seeing the sunlight. It's clear? Now extend this a little bit more. It's a night, but it is a full moon night. I give this example all the time, but if you understand the example, then the essence is clear. So it's a full moon night. I look at the sky and everything is clear, no clouds. Then I see a bright moon in the sky. Recently, the moon was the biggest moon. It was a red moon because the sun is almost opposite and you have only red light from the sun is falling on it. And that moon is red. It's a red light from the sun because red light only can bend more. That's why in the sunset you see the red light in the setting sun, because even though sun is setting, the red light is bending around It can bend because of its wavelength. Same in the morning, you see sun red. And then once it becomes, sun becomes hot, white hot. So when I'm looking at the moon on a full moon, I say, oh, moon is beautiful. Now, do you know, I can see bright light of the moon. In fact, I can even see things in the moonlight. What? Objects, and it's because so bright. In the moonlight, I can see an object. And looking at the moon and say, there's a bright moon in the sky, and farther away I see another Venus or Mercury or another planet, tiny planet that I can see from here, because moon is so close that I see big, and that's far away, therefore I see small, but that's also shining there. We're not worrying about the stars which are self-shining. We know that moon doesn't have a light, but I'm seeing the moonlight. Clear? How? What I'm seeing is only sunlight reflected by the moon and coming back and reaching to me, and I say it is a moonlight, but what I am saying is only sunlight. But via the moon, and when it's reflected, the heat is absorbed, only cool light is coming to me. So moon is very cool. So in the sunlight, the heat and the things of both are falling, but the heat is get absorbed, but only the moon is reflecting some of the light from the sun, and therefore it is what I am seeing is the sunlight, even though I call it as a moonlight. I cannot see the sunlight directly, but the moon is bright. In the same way, the mind, which by itself is inert, it's a subtle material, but by reflecting the all-pervading consciousness, it acts, it is a bright conscious entity, just as the moon has become a bright luminous entity by reflection. So mind acts as though it's a conscious entity because of the reflection, and whereas the body cannot act as a conscious entity because it has no capacity to reflect the consciousness. It's only a dark or a gross matter. Same with all inert objects. Now you see now, the mind like a moon, in fact the moon is a presiding deity of the mind according to Vedanta. And the moon, just as reflecting sunlight, the mind is also reflecting the consciousness and appearing as a conscious entity. Now, beyond the moon, there is sunlight also, but I don't see. I can only see again another planet or satellite if I can see. Same moon, sunlight is falling all over, but there is no reflecting medium to reflect the sunlight. Therefore I say there is a bright moonlight and there is nothing beyond, and I can see a Mercury or Venus even though sunlight is everywhere. Beyond the moon I cannot see sunlight. So now two things. I cannot see the moon without the sunlight. Now more important is I cannot recognize the presence of sunlight unless moon reflects or another object reflects. I need a reflecting media in order to recognize, not create, recognize the presence of the sunlight. Now same way apply to consciousness and the mind. So mind has the capacity to reflect the all-pervading consciousness, and even though consciousness is there in between my mind and your mind, but there is no subtle material to reflect it. Therefore, same consciousness falling in the other mind also gets reflected. I say he's conscious entity, she's conscious entity, and so on and so forth, because the reflecting media are able to reflect the consciousness which is infinite. Now what is Brahman and what is Jiva has to be understood. So Jiva comes into picture because the mind has the capacity to reflect consciousness. By the process of reflection, it becomes a conscious entity, and that itself is not a jiva. When it becomes a conscious entity, not knowing that I am only reflecting, I am only a medium, the consciousness that I have is nothing but the pure existing consciousness that I am. Not knowing that consciousness, all-pervading consciousness, takes itself a localized reflecting media along with the reflection as the localized conscious entity. So I am in that identification with the mind as I am the mind, identification with the intellect, I am an intellect. Who is identifying? The reflected consciousness, the activated mind. Looking at the consciousness that it is, it's a consciousness aspect. I am part, the consciousness part, and I am this, is localized, whereas that consciousness part of it is coming from the totality. So when I identify myself with the locality, that I am here with the space, time, and conditioned by the mind, when I identify, not knowing the consciousness is that I am is infinite, then that individual becomes a jiva. So jiva is the one who is having reflected consciousness, because there is the original consciousness and the reflecting medium. And the reflected consciousness makes the mind active as though enlivened, and becomes a apparent conscious entity and claim that I am a jiva. Who has a problem? It is the mind that has a notion that the consciousness that is exhibiting is by itself, for I am the original consciousness. He has a problem. We'll go into this more detail, because once you understand the jiva, then self-realization becomes very clear, and then process for it we will discuss slowly. At this we stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Sishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. 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 Om.